the lead instructor for 90 students, and within that there were 3 sections. And the one I had was on marathon, and I took people who were wanting to run the marathon for the first time and trained them, and then I took them to Rehoboth Beach, Delaware in December, and we ran our marathon up there. Jamie contacted me about wanting to do a research project with the class. I said, that's fine. She happens to be a marathon runner also. Did Boston this spring, which you can probably relate some tales with that. And so she went, ran the marathon, and just told me she went back to Rehoboth this past December, ran a half marathon up there. So it's been a real pleasure getting to work with her. If you read the New York Times, she was just recently quoted in a New York Times article, professor of psychology at James Madison University. And so with that, Jamie, it's all yours, and let us know a little bit what you're talking about today. And then I know we'll open up the question and answers, and they probably have some questions for you.
Yeah, hi everyone. How's it going? Have I seen some of you last year? Were some of you here last year? Yeah, good. So yeah, what I thought I would talk about this time around was similar themes to what I talked about last year. My focus is always on like well-being and like kind of a holistic approach to wellness and how running can fit into that. So one thing I like to think about is like how can the runners maintain their love of the sport over many years or maybe their entire life. And a big aspect of that is, you know, bouncing back from setbacks and coping resiliently with those times when, you know, things don't always go so well. And what stories do you tell yourself, and how do you motivate yourself to keep going through setbacks, through injuries, through disappointments, things like that. So I have some things I wanted to kind of talk about with them, just to give you a little bit of a heads up. Yeah, a little bit about me. You'll hear that in a minute. I really like Des Linden's memoir that came out this year. There have been so many great running books that came out this year. Kara Goucher's and Des's and Lauren Fleshman and some others. But I really like this quote that I'll kind of unpack with the students about how Des like discovered running in high school and the feelings of freedom it gave her, and agency. And I thought we would kind of talk about that, and like, have you as campers, as runners, ever felt this way? Like, when do you really love a run? And what does that look like? So I asked them to bring their phones just for a second to do one of these little anonymous mentee surveys. So basically you scan this QR code, and if that isn't working for them, they can type in a little thing there from the bottom and just tell me like what makes a run really great for you. And then it appears like a little word cloud. You can see everybody's responses. And then we can kind of talk about themes that are emerging and go from there a little bit. And I thought I'd refer back to this quote and be like, some of the things that popped up here were like personal agency, like having that freedom, having that choice, where to go, what to do, how fast, how far, distraction from whatever happened that day, nature, personal goals, like, what are some of your things that keep you going? And then, okay, when do you not feel like this? Like, what makes a run go not so great? So we'll see what people say, and have to be a little bit flexible there in terms of themes that emerge that maybe are a little unexpected. I like these because they're anonymous, so people hopefully will feel free to say, diarrhea, I don't know, whatever. And we can talk about that, not diarrhea, but other things. And yeah, I wanted to be a little bit more flexible this year, because last year, like when we got to the questions people asked, I was sort of taken by surprise with some of the things that the runners were wondering about that I hadn't anticipated, and things I told them that I don't know if it hit the mark. So I wanted to be a little bit more kind of open to what they wanted to talk about today in the session. And then I do have a few things, like I like this little thing about, progress isn't just constant upward motion. Sometimes you have little bumps, and so how can you pull yourself out of a slump? So I'm really big on this idea of self-compassion, which is being kind to yourself, not being so mean and critical of yourself. We often think that that's the road to excellence, right? How am I ever going to get better if I'm nice to myself when I screw up? But there's all this evidence that it's actually much more likely to lead to success if you can just sort of forgive yourself and not talk to yourself in such a hateful way. What else can we do? This thing is temperamental. Gratitude, just letting yourself feel some of the joy in running and focus on that can be really powerful. Focusing on supporting others, like especially if you're injured or you have a bad day, focusing on supporting your team, or even if you're injured, maybe volunteering at a local race, somehow staying involved in the community. There's so many different ways to be involved, of course, in the running community, as you all know. And I mean, social media, I think, is big. It's Strava. Do your runners use Strava a lot? Yeah. Which is a double-edged sword, right? Like, you can feel great about your run, and then you see, oh, well, this person went further or faster. Or for me, it's like, I felt good about that, but my friends are up at 5 a.m. Why don't I get up at 5 a.m.? Like, there's always somebody doing it a little bit better, a little bit longer, further. So can we, be mindful about how social media is helping and hurting, and make conscious choices about how we use that stuff? Changing it up to pull yourself out of a slump, and find new ways to challenge yourself. Just to kind of keep it fresh, because we want to, of course, maintain the love of running for a really long time. And then I'll ask them if they have any ideas as well. And then I also, this is getting maybe a little bit nerdy, but I love this idea of I wish I had known about this when I was their age or even a few years ago. Something called the arrival fallacy, which is, it's this belief that once we get there, we'll be happy. Once I make varsity, once I break this time, once I qualify for Boston, once I finish my first marathon, then I'll feel good, I'll be happy. And that's always kind of disappointing, because you get there and you're feeling actually a little bit let down. So just kind of acknowledging that that's a common feeling. I have this quote from a Norwegian, I believe, runner. How do we avoid this? So that's, a little nerdy, but I think it's good. And then what would you like for a psychologist who runs to share with your runners? Any emerging issues or challenges in the mental health realm? Yeah.
I want you to address the kids who are constantly comparing themselves to their teammates.
Yes.
And not measured up.
Yeah.
I ran British Knob and I ran 5 miles, but my time was terrible.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of kid who's never satisfied.
Yeah. Okay. So social comparison. And it's so easy with running because you have the data, right? It's hard numbers and you can see it clearly. So yeah, that's a really important one. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's social comparison. It's like a tool for social comparison. Yeah.
I think for mine, see this especially amongst my female runners, just a high level of stress, on the starting line. Last year, I had a lot of girls that would get to the starting line and start crying, that type of thing, which I felt terrible for. I'm trying to talk them through it, but as much as I try to do that, for them it's just a mental thing. So
Mm-hmm.
that kind of thing, just putting a lot of heavy expectations on themselves. And it's funny, I didn't really see it as much with my varsity runners as I did with the JV runners that seem to put a much higher level of pressure on themselves.
Wow. Okay. So the stress, the pressure, yeah.
Yeah, slightly off topic, but do you do anything, your running data around some of the social
So like TikTok versus Instagram versus, yeah. Okay. I feel like a dinosaur talking about TikTok, but I think that's the one they use a lot, yeah. And there's all kinds of fitness stuff and running stuff, and once you start down that road, then they send you more and more because they know you. It's like the algorithm. Yeah. Okay.
One of the things that interests me is on the other slide, the very top thing about being compassionate or whatever to yourself, is how they are self-compassion, how they are affected by how their teammates perceive them, and they'll say or do stuff in practice. So one of the things I have talked about before is to recognize that everybody is not going to be as good maybe as you are, to appreciate what each individual does
Yes.
themselves as compared to everybody else. If everybody was going to be the same, you would either be really, really good or really, really bad.
Mm-hmm. Right, so your skills and your strengths go beyond your times, right? They go into what kind of teammate you are, what kind of support system you can provide, what kind of inspiration, your own resilience, your own ability to like there's so many skills, right, that can get overshadowed when we're just focused on our time.
But it also goes to your up and down thing. Everybody's not going to set a PR every time they run. You're
Yeah.
going to have some downs times.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the end of the world.
Yeah. I found it really interesting to read some of these books by these professional runners who, if you don't think critically about it, you're like, they're always out crushing it. They have to be crushing it every single day, like at that caliber. And then you read about their very real struggles with injury, with disappointment, with depression, anxiety, and you're like, wow, no, they're all just people. So I found that really helpful if any of them are inclined to put something on their summer reading list.
Ingebrigtsen, actually, with the comment that you made up there,
Yeah.
after Tokyo, then there's all kinds of questions. When are you going to set the next world record?
Yeah.
When are you going to set the next world record? They celebrated for about 30 seconds, and then, hey, what's next?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Molly Seidel, who won the bronze in Tokyo or wherever they did the marathon, she talked very openly about coming back home and getting really sucked into some mental health stuff. Part of it was that outside pressure. What's next? Like, you have to keep performing at this level. And also just getting to that level and achieving that dream and just feeling not as exuberant and incredible as she maybe had expected. So just kind of knowing that that's something that happens to everybody.
Molly was good on social media about being very open about if she had some DNF, or at least one DNF.
Yeah.
She was very open about that.
Mm-hmm.
Which that kind of stuff, if kids are on social media, that's the kind of stuff that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Somebody who said, hey, I didn't have it right this time.
Mm-hmm.
I think kids need to make sure that they compare themselves to their self yesterday.
Yes. Yeah. Compare yourself
You
to.
got different bodies and different.
Mhm.
You can't look at the first place and be like, I'm gonna be first place when you're not going to be first place, but you can't be better than you were yesterday. And I think that's something that they get lost in, especially with social media.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we are all going to compare ourselves to something, right? So I think it's kind of human nature. So how do we choose those comparisons wisely? Compare yourself to your times last year, or hopefully in a way that makes you feel okay, or to your own goals, right? Like, what are your goals that you set out maybe at the beginning of the season, and can you try to focus on how you're doing there and not focus so much on what other people are doing all around you? That's hard, but yeah. Mm-hmm. But it's also a good lesson for life, right? Because you're always gonna have, be it at work or in your relationships or financially or whatever. Like, the quicker we can learn to not do that, I think the better off we'll all be.
You got any sleep tidbits for these kids?
I mean, probably nothing that you haven't thought of before. Phones in the bed, phones at night, screens at night, not helpful, right? So that's something I think we all know, but we don't always practice it.
The sleep's a really good one.
Mhm.
Then once they're asleep, if they wake up and how to get back to sleep, I think it's kind of shocking how many kids have trouble with that.
Really? Gosh.
So they just pick up the phone again and just start another day.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if they live in a place where if you have like roommates or share, they're not in college. Mostly they're in high school. Mix high school and college. High school. So yeah, get up, maybe read a book or do something without a screen, as opposed to lying there fretting. I think there's all these really great like podcasts you can put on in the middle of the night if you can't sleep that are designed to lull you back to sleep, but you really have to be disciplined to not go into your phone and do other things. So I hesitate to suggest that. But they're called sleep stories, and they're designed to be boring and just kind of a story with no real plot, just to kind of lull you back to sleep. There's one called Nothing Much Happens, and that's kind of literally true. Nothing happens in these stories, but yeah, again, you can get pulled into the wrong stuff on your phone. So, And I assume some of these kids, especially when school starts, are going to be doing school all day, running, coming home, eating, doing homework. And how do you turn that off and just like,
One of the worst parts
yeah.
of coming home, they gotta talk to their parents.
Uh-huh.
And every parent is obviously a better coach than their coach.
Mm.
Calls out the game.
Mm-hmm.
Give the parents a phone.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you have parents.
Sleep's a tough one. Yeah. Have you noticed changes in your runners since COVID, since they came back from being home in school?
Less kids.
What's that? Fewer of them? Somebody back there?
Less independent, like.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, we had the kid that's always like, let me call my mom, and now everybody's like it's just, they can't wipe their butt by themselves sometimes, and it's just like, what are you doing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I take students on a study abroad, and I took one group since COVID, and I definitely noticed less independence than I noticed before. It's difficult. Anything else? Anything like socially? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The next part is the end of that list, I mean, this was like 3 goals. And like the first time we did this, a kid was like, I wanna make new friends. And I'm like, I really like that goal. And then like someone like, I wanna make the regionals, I wanna make states, I want these times, so give us a thing. And then one little kid was like, I wanna make new friends. And I'm like, that's not my goal. No, yeah. Do you? Get all the new kids. They make them so easy. It's like they're almost afraid to.
Mm.
It's like, yeah, you can run that, all right? Think of their parts of that.
Tell us something unusual or different about them. They're kind of like that cat.
Yeah.
Open it up, because we're going to be together for the next 3-4 months.
Yeah.
Yeah. They
Mm.
won't do it face to face.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Part of that was there too, I think I was just saying, is like they're fearful socially.
Mm-hmm.
Fear of even an adult talking to me, like, how am I supposed to react to that? But also socially,
Yeah.
what if I say something and then it's not how I wanted it to be perceived?
Mm-hmm.
They're fearful of that reaction.
Yeah. And there's an easy way to avoid that. Just don't talk.
Anything you say to them, like correcting or providing input, like you can't just say, hang on, like Stan saying, don't go down the middle, or even when he's not being,
Oh boy. Yeah, I mean,
You fixed that today?
yes, yeah. And then all the ones that we fixed today, please send them to JMU psychology department so they will come eventually end up in my classroom. Now it used to be like before class you had to be like, okay, everybody quiet down, come on, it's time to start. And now it's just like you could hear a pin drop. So yeah, we're all seeing it. Other things that would be beneficial to hit if we have time.
Can she fix that too?
What's that? Oh. Yeah, we'll work on that one today too. Okay.
Sleep, common sense,
And fix COVID, the damage of COVID. Mm-hmm. Okay, we'll get going on that. Problem solving. How did we all learn it? If we did, you just have to go out and have things happen and figure it out, right? So how do we put them in scenarios where they have to learn problem solving themselves?
Most of their parents are too young, they don't understand themselves.
Ah. Well, I think they're on the right track by putting themselves out there and playing sports, right? They could be just checking out of all of it. So just the fact that they're here and doing it is, I think, setting them on the right path, even if we don't see it, you know? What else? Anything else?
Seems like a lot of times, no is an inappropriate answer to anything.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
To most of us, for many of us, most of us have been teachers, no is a perfectly acceptable answer to a lot of questions. But then, even if you say it nicely, you've got your hands full.
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean, and everyone is so tired about it, whatever? I don't know.
How do we fix that one?
I know a lot with my parents.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
I think that goes back to my school district. It was during COVID. They were never deadlines.
Mm-hmm.
Always showed grace, and which I think that was appropriate at that time. But the pendulum has swung so far towards
Yeah.
grace that when kids do here now, it's like, what? I can do that. So yeah, that's definitely a hangover for me.
Definitely. Yeah. What kinds of things would you have to say no to? Like, can I skip this run, or I don't feel like coming to practice today, or
still run on Saturday.
uh-huh.
Maybe they need to learn that the grace can be given after you actually try.
Oh.
Not giving you
Mhm.
grace just because you don't want to do it.
Yeah.
You want to actually put yourself out there, and then we'll tell you,
Mhm.
okay, it's okay, but here's how you get that right. I don't know, they just don't have that maturity to know.
Right. So,
First try.
so some grace can be given once I see you're actually trying, and you don't just get it by default.
Can I run with the beginners?
Mm.
Sometimes, having them to do that, but sometimes they really need to be challenged.
Yeah, and I imagine that would be a challenge for you to know when to push them and when to not push them.
Well, I've got some who they won't unless they're pushed, they will self-select the easiest route.
Mm-hmm.
Not too many, most of the kids are the opposite, but I do have a couple that will do that, and it's frustrating because you see that they could be good, they could be really
Yeah.
good, but they're self-selecting.
getting better.
Yeah.
You know, you say the thing about that we don't know, understand how, we say no to something. I think the other side of that is they don't know when to say no, because
everybody wants them. And so they want them in this club, they want them to take
Yeah.
care of this, they want them to help with this and that. And they have so much on their plate, and they can't handle it. And they don't know how to say, no, I can't do that, I got this going on. So they don't know how to say that. I think that's true.
Not good at making decisions when, like, if I go to practice or do I go to rehearsal, or I don't want to make the coach mad, but I don't want to make kids. I feel like some kids are stretched so thin already.
Uh-huh.
School's got some more stress on them.
Some
Yeah.
of them are stretched thin, because parents want them in SAT prep. They want them horseback riding.
Uh-huh.
They want them running cross country and being a full participant, doing 5 other things.
Mhm.
Soccer.
Oh yeah, you got to get that college application just so, right?
Tell them to have to do.
But
Why
yeah.
do you need SAT prep in 9th grade?
Mhm.
My problem is the kids go to guidance counselor says you have to have this, 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 and this to be on your transcripts. Well, the kid wants to go run the college. The college coaches would figure that kid could care less if he's in the Fritz Club or someone else. So, you know, that's where they're being told you have to do this many things. And then if you're in some schools or specialty schools, like, you don't even get to see those kids but once or twice a week. Because it's required, because it's intracurricular instead of extracurricular.
Oh, okay, so we'll fix that. Okay, thank you.
You know, we're hearing a lot about traits that you're seeing exhibited at the high school level.
Yes.
Are you seeing them come forward to the college level? And then what are we to expect going forward into the job world? In other words, where does this subject grow? Has it come to the college level? You're seeing the same sort of things that you're hearing about here. And
Yeah.
so how do we get that transition to where it's different?
Well, I think, so how do I see this at the college level playing out? I teach juniors and seniors, primarily all psychology students. And everything you're saying, I'm like, yep, I see it in them too. So the lack of independence, the reliance on the parents for everything, which has been like the last decade. That's not really new. I think that's maybe a phone thing. The not being able to say no, right? Because it's the arrival fallacy again. Like, it's not like you get to college and then you can chill out. No, then you have to figure out, well, now I have to go to grad school, especially in psychology. And so I still have to say yes to everything. And I've never developed the ability to say no. So I see a lot of students sort of disappearing. Like, they'll be doing a thesis, an honors thesis, and like I won't hear from them for a while, and they don't know how to tell me, like, I can't do this. I can't handle it all. So I definitely see that not knowing your limits thing playing out, especially in the higher achievers. Yeah. So how do we manage that? And life only gets more and more complicated. So at some point you have to learn to say no. Behavior modification. Oh, is that also? Okay. Yeah.
I think we also have to, you know, we've got counselors who are in college who already are having to deal with it, but you know, we've got kids that will be going to college, and some potentially run to college, and that's totally different. You're on your own, you're having to deal with school, you're having to deal with workouts.
Yeah.
When you go to college,
Yeah. How do you manage that? Yeah. Yeah, you're still you when you go to college, right? It's a different environment, but you'll still have your struggles, you'll still have your strengths. You won't have mom and dad looking over you in the same way, probably.
Some can't manage the freedom, like all
Yeah.
of freedom.
Yeah, believe me, some cannot manage the freedom. Some of them figure it out, but some of them have a pretty rough go those first few months. And I wonder if they are running, if that helps them stay a little bit more focused, a little bit better, at managing their time. Because I think one of the challenges of college is the expanse of time. Like in high school, you're in school from 8 to 3, and then you go to your practice, and you have all these things you have to do. But in college, there are days you don't have a single class, or you might have class for an hour or two, and if the test isn't for 3 weeks, there's all kinds of fun distractions, right? So yeah, that's something I see is just like how do they use their time? How do they learn to use their time? And that's it's not about being smart, By the time they get there, they're like they can do school, they can learn stuff, they can take tests. It's more about those other skills, planning, time management. And again, I think that the students you work with probably are at an advantage because they do have all these things built into their schedules that help them stay focused, but the challenge is when they don't have those things anymore. So, whew, we got some work to do. Well, I'm not sure we're going to get to all of these things with these guys, but what's that? Okay, or maybe they could just bring it in and we can spend the day. Well, we'll do our best with the time we have. How about like eating stuff? Is there any of that? No.
Maybe they're not eating enough.
Yeah, like
They don't realize that they think if they eat less, they lose weight and their metabolism, but it's the way it affects their metabolism.
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Have you guys read Kara Goucher's book that came out this year about her time with Nike? Really interesting read about like body image and tons of stuff. But
I don't know if this even applicable, but when the kids in high school, they can freely join the art club, the science club, whatever like that. But being a part of an athletic team is something that's different. You have to actually earn your spot there. And so I don't know how that be. I don't know, but most people coaching track and cross country, you don't cut anybody.
mm-hmm.
If they come out, I'll find a spot for you. We'll figure out some event. Sometimes that's impossible. But is there anything to be said psychologically for that you have to earn your way onto a sports team as opposed to being able to just join a club?
I think maybe at first, like there's that pride of, I earned my spot, but once you're on the team, I think all those same social comparison things are gonna kick in, and we just don't compare ourselves to all the people who didn't make the team, right? They're gonna compare themselves to the people who are faster. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So I don't know if it matters that much. It might bond them together more to know that they were selected. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was one of the kids who got on the team just because everybody got on the team, and like I knew it was a swim team. I'm like, there's the good ones over in lane 1, and then I'm over here in lane 3, and like the coach doesn't know my name, and you know, it wasn't a point of pride, but it was okay, I guess. It's still fun to be on a team, I think.
That's often a question that maybe you don't ask out loud, but when you truly ask, why would this kid come out and cross country?
Mm-hmm.
What's up with that? Because there's no way that physically they can deal with it.
Yeah. What are the motivations to go out for cross country?
I'm going to ask that tonight. I hope I get some answers.
Mm-hmm.
Most
Resume.
motivation for doing anything is something that they were previously good at, whether it's
Yeah.
playing 600 in the PE class or
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is. And somebody said, well, you ought to run track. You did so-and-so. You can't shoot, basket, whatever. You're not tall enough for basketball, fast enough for football, or whatever. So, well, we can always run track.
Or this is what my friends are doing.
That's the big one that I get. Is
Mm-hmm.
I cut a lot of my runnership from, hey, my friends are doing it, so I'll do it. And then coming from where I am, historically, we've had a very good running program, and parents know that, so they
Mm-hmm.
want their kids to be part of that. It's a big shirt about it. So.
I think a big thing for like cross country is like a lot of kids want to be healthy.
Yeah.
Like I joined cross country my sophomore year because I was overweight and my first 5K was like 12, 30 Ks, and I was like walking up hills and stuff. But then I started getting healthy and I started really liking it. And like by the time I left, I was like 2A state champion a couple times. Like I'm like a college counselor here. So I feel like for cross country specifically, like you can really find a lot of kids that really just want to like live a better, healthier, active lifestyle.
Mm-hmm. Which is great, right? I mean, yeah, like ideally they have this stressful day, they're sitting in their seats all day, and then they get to go outside with their friends and run. It's
It's their best part of the day.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
But it takes, I feel like it takes a little time for people to, like, especially like freshmen, you do this run.
Yeah.
We had a kid the other day, it was his first day of practice, and he went for an easy run, and, fell off. I'm talking to my seniors, and, I'm telling them paces and stuff to do, kind of keep it easy. And he, I can't run, I go, okay, this is your first day. And I had everybody, in a circle at the end, I said, who hated their first day of cross country? And everybody was And I think, some schools have just a team that, like a cross country team that just, it's almost, it's part of the school. But I think some schools don't. Like when I got there, cross country, there was nobody there, And, we kind of built a program, but it's like, still, it's one of those things where it's like Ocean Lakes, I mean, they have a great cross country program and everybody, knows them in the area. And as long as I've known them, they've had a really good program, But it's one of those things where it takes a little bit of getting into because, you have a crush on the first day, and it's a hard first day. And, you applaud those ones that keep coming back, and trying. Some are like
Yeah. And cross country season is it always in the fall? Yeah. So it's hot. And yeah. We don't talk about that. No. It is what it is, right?
It snowed in Arizona to practice on Wednesday, and the next Thursday was 8. It snowed at cross country practice. That was a moment. I can't.
All right. Well, they might start